The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, February 12th. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. And our weather. Considerable cloudiness today with a couple of snow showers. Storm total snowfall 1 to 3 inches. A high of 24. Mostly cloudy tonight, a low of 11. Sunshine and a few clouds tomorrow. Breezy in the afternoon, a high of 31. Saturday, a high of 34 and a low of 24, mostly cloudy. And Sunday, a high of 37 and a low of 25. Our highs and lows nationally. The high was in Brownsville, Texas, 84. The low in International Falls, Minnesota, -4. The ski conditions are still good in most of the areas around here. And instead of doing the snow derby, I'm going to read the snow levels within New York State. And the leader is Syracuse with 119 inches to date, followed by Rochester, 95.2 inches year to date. Jamestown, 90 inches, and Buffalo, 77. So why do we get all the credit? I mean, I traveled those roads, and Rochester and Syracuse always had more snow than us. So now I beg to differ with it. Sunrise today was at 7:17 a.m. and sunset will be at 5:43 p.m. So that we're inching up to longer daylight, which is wonderful. And now to our front page news. GOP nominee Blakeman rips Hochul, pledges to back Trump. Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman promised to overhaul the radical agenda of Governor Kathy Hochul and pledged continued loyalty to President Trump as he cruised to the Republican nomination for governor at the GOP state convention on Wednesday. Facing a crowd of well-wishers at the Garden City Hotel in Blakeman's home county, Blakeman cast Hochul, a Democrat who took office in August 2021, as the cause of high taxes, soaring electric bills, and increased insurance costs. Excuse me. While Hochul has repeatedly highlighted statistics that show crime has dropped, Blakeman accused the governor of being weak on crime and touted Nassau County as the safest county in the country. Kathy Hochul simply has a record of failure. This is not just a campaign speech, he said. This is about comparing my record of success to Kathy Hochul's 4 years of failure. Citing the governor's support for New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, Blakeman said, the lunatic left is running the state. Blakeman, 70, of Atlantic Beach, said Hochul has wrongly used taxpayer dollars to support recent immigrants he said have entered the country illegally. Make no mistake about it, if Kathy Hochul is reelected, she will expand the radical agenda of billion-dollar tax hikes, defend criminals, and cede control of your communities to criminals. We simply can't afford 4 more years of Hochul's lack of leadership, and that's why I'm running for governor of New York State. 2 months ago, when Blakeman launched his gubernatorial campaign, he faced an uphill battle to get past Representative Elise Stefanik, a high-profile Republican from Saratoga County and close ally of President Trump for the GOP party line. Stefanik soon dropped out of the race, leaving Blakeman a clear lane to the nomination. On Wednesday, Trump enthusiastically endorsed Blakeman in a video shown to the convention crowd. He mentioned that Blakeman has won in a county where Democrats outnumber Republicans by nearly 71,000 votes. Be sure to get out and vote in November so we can save New York State. I will be working with Blues very hard. We'll do a great job. He is the winner. He's going to win this state and turn it around, Trump said. Trump's popularity has been dropping in deeply Democratic New York. In a Siena University poll last month, when New York voters were asked if they had a favorable or unfavorable opinion of Trump, 63% said unfavorable as opposed to 33% who said favorable. Blakeman said he was blessed to have the president's endorsement. I want to be very clear to everyone that when it comes to President Trump, I will always have his back, he said to a raucous applause. Ryan Radulovaki, a spokesperson for Hochul's campaign, jumped on Trump's comments that he and Blakeman would be working together. Donald Trump said the quiet part out loud. If Blakeman wins in November, Trump will be running the state of New York right alongside him, the spokesperson said. Earlier Wednesday, Hochul running mate Adrian Adams and Democratic State Chairman Jay Jacobs led a rally across the street from the hotel hosting the Republican convention. We are here to make sure that MAGA does not trample all over our rights, over our communities, over our citizens. Adams, the former Speaker of the New York City Council, told dozens of fellow protesters, "We are here to make sure Kathy Hochul's leadership remains in the state of New York." Last month, separate killings in Minneapolis of civilians Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers have led to widespread scrutiny of the agency from both Democrats and some Republicans. Hochul has proposed a law to end agreements between ICE and local law enforcement agencies that allow local officers to work as deputized ICE agents. Madison County Sheriff Todd Hood, Blakeman's running mate for lieutenant governor, leads a department that has an agreement to allow its officers to work with ICE. And speaking at the convention Wednesday, Hood appeared to tear up as he spoke about his 3 decades of work in law enforcement, which includes 22 years with the Syracuse Police Department and work as a gang investigator. Hood said New York, due to Democratic control of the governor's mansion and both houses of the state legislature, is less safe than it should be. For over 30 years I wore a badge, he said. As police officers, we have walked into dangerous situations where others were running away. We've confronted victims, we've buried our colleagues, and we watch politicians in Albany pass laws that make all of that harder and make all of our communities less safe. One political figure welcomed at the convention was former New York Governor George Pataki, the last Republican to hold statewide office. Pataki lauded Blakeman, whom he appointed to sit as a commissioner on the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey between 2001 and 2009. The Port Authority operated the World Trade Center. Pataki noted that Blakeman was on the board during the 9/11 attacks, which took the life of Blakeman's nephew, Thomas Jurgens, 27, a senior court officer. Pataki, 80, a little-known state senator from Peekskill, upset Governor Mario Cuomo in 1994, ultimately winning 3 terms. Pataki said he believed Blakeman could defeat Hochul, 67, a Buffalo-born former Erie County clerk and member of Congress. "I'm here to tell you it can be done," he said, urging Republicans to get out, speak to neighbors, and convince them to vote for Blakeman. Blakeman and Hood lead a Republican slate of statewide candidates that includes Brooklyn attorney Saritha Koma Reddy, a former federal prosecutor who will challenge Attorney General Letitia James and Joseph Hernandez, a Manhattan entrepreneur and former refugee from Cuba, to run for comptroller.
Deal reached in lawsuits related to Tops massacre. Gun accessory manufacturer settles lawsuits related to Tops massacre for $1.75 million. This is by Aaron Besecker, who's a news staff reporter. A gun accessory manufacturer whose product was used in the racist mass shootings in Buffalo in 2022 will pay $1.75 million to settle a series of lawsuits, attorneys for the plaintiffs announced Wednesday. Mean Arms manufactured and sold what it called the MA lock, which the shooter used to fire more rounds more quickly during the attack on May 14, 2022. The settlement also requires Mean Arms to stop selling the device in New York State and to include on its packaging that it is illegal to sell in the state. State Attorney General Letitia James joined victims' family members and others to announce the settlement against Mean Arms on Wednesday afternoon during a news conference at the Frank E. Merriweather Library. We hope that by holding this manufacturer accountable and banning it from selling this device in New York State, we can offer the people of Buffalo some measure of comfort and knowing that those responsible for such acts of hate and violence will not go unpunished in New York, James said. Peyton Gendron, the gunman convicted of killing 10 black people at the Tops Market on Jefferson Avenue, used an AR-15 style rifle equipped with Mean Arms accessory in the attack, which also injured 3 people. In addition to the Attorney General's office, victims' families and survivors of the shooting also filed lawsuits against Mean Arms. The settlement announced Wednesday covers all lawsuits against Mean Arms, said James, who began the news conference by reading the names of the 10 people who were killed in the Tops shooting. Attorneys for Mean Arms, a Georgia-based company also known as Mean LLC, could not immediately be reached for comment. Other defendants facing lawsuits stemming from the racist massacre have also agreed to settlements that must be approved in court, according to attorneys, including claims against Gendron's parents and Vintage Firearms, the Endicott store where Gendron purchased a Bushmaster XM15 rifle. Paul and Pamela Gendron have agreed to a financial settlement, according to attorneys. Terms of the settlement are confidential, said Andy Debbins, who represented some of the plaintiffs. Robert Donald, owner of Vintage Firearms, has relinquished his firearms license, which shutters his business, attorneys John Elmore and Kristen Elmore Garcia said. Also named as defendants in the state's suit against Mean Arms were Matthew Underwood, identified as founder and principal, and Colin Underwood, principal. The suit identifies them as brothers who live in Georgia who run the company. The company sold the accessory for $19.99, according to the state's lawsuit. Use of the accessory is supposed to prevent detachable magazines from being used with that type of rifle, but state authorities accused Mean Arms of advertising the ease with which the magazine lock can be removed. Having his weapon equipped with the MA lock allowed Gendron to use several detachable 30-round magazines. Investigators determined the shooter fired 50 rounds in 123 seconds. When Gendron bought the gun in January 2022, the lock was installed, but he sought to remove it almost immediately, according to his online diary. The Attorney General's office sued Mean Arms in 2023, accusing the company of helping the convicted gunman get around restrictions on high-capacity assault rifles. The suit had been pending in state Supreme Court in New York County. A state appellate court last year rejected the company's appeal of a lower court's refusal to dismiss the case. The lawsuit accused the company of engaging in deceptive business practices and false advertising, while claiming it aided and abetted the possession of assault weapons. New York federal authorities are seeking the death penalty for Gendron, who faces hate crime charges for the attack. Gendron, who was 18 at the time of the shooting, pleaded guilty to state charges, including 10 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree attempted murder, and has already been sentenced to life in prison. Other civil lawsuits stemming from the violence are ongoing. The Court of Appeals, the state's top court, is expected to hear an appeal in the case against various internet companies later this year.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and we will now move on to our editorial. Urgent needs. Recent coverage by the news of water main breaks that have flooded Buffalo streets and buildings, forced evacuations, irreparably damaged music and art equipment, and laid waste to cars should add up to a resounding clarion call. Local leaders must join together in urging major capital projects to replace Buffalo's ancient and deteriorating infrastructure. Last week, a water main break at Hurdle and Military Road in Buffalo caused significant flooding. It damaged part of a road and nearby housing complex. It also left people stranded on an NFTA bus. Buffalo firefighters helped about 8 people trapped in vehicles on the night of February 4th near the Hurdle Avenue break. They were all freed, roughly 26 people in the neighborhood, including residents of the Jasper Parish complex, which the city said sustained confirmed damage, were evacuated as a precaution. Also on the same night, as reported by Dan Herback, about 25 local musicians had to flee from a Hurdle Avenue rehearsal studio. Instruments were damaged and many ruined. The rescued musicians, who tend to live on humble budgets, were helped by firefighters as they did their best to save as many of their precious instruments as possible. As reported by the News' Aaron Bessaker, Dan Higgins, and Justin Sundell, city crews were also dealing with the break of the same size water line at Texas and Wecker Streets near East Delavan and Bailey Avenues. Water main breaks have seemed unending in recent days and can be attributed to consistently freezing temperatures. Deidre Williams reported that the SEPA Gallery postponed an opening reception scheduled for last Friday evening of an exhibit due to a catastrophic water main break inside its building at 617 Main Street. Ben Hickey, CPA's executive director, said SEPA's 3 galleries were not damaged, but other areas and equipment, including highly specialized photographic equipment used to support exhibitions, workshops, and education outreach. Mother Nature is playing a huge role here. However, it doesn't help that Buffalo is riddled with aging infrastructure that could be addressed through capital investment. New York state funds will help repair the city's water and sewer infrastructure, but within the city of Buffalo, there is a battle over capital budget borrowing. It must end. Round 1 began with Mayor Christopher Scanlon and City Controller Barbara Miller-Williams disputing the city's capital budget and the need to borrow for its projects, and now has extended to recently elected Mayor Sean Ryan. Last fiscal year's $110 million capital budget is in court. Miller-Williams declared the borrowing fiscally irresponsible. Scanlon and Fillmore District Common Council member Mitch Nowakowski sued her in September, arguing that Miller-Williams did not have the authority to hold up the city's capital budget approved in December 2024. The newest $95 million capital budget is also not faring well with the comptroller. Miller-Williams is standing firm on a $28 million debt cap, one that Scanlon and others insisted is advisory only. State Supreme Court Justice Emilio Kolikovo ruled in favor of Scanlon and Nowakowski, compelling Miller-Williams to borrow the full amount. The comptroller filed an appeal to the appellate division, and city leadership is now awaiting that higher court's decision. Now Ryan is charged with guiding the city out of this capital borrowing dispute. What's being held at bay? Millions of dollars in reimbursable capital projects on school buildings, the city's aging vehicle fleet, road work, and one could assume the type of old infrastructure that has been creating havoc throughout Buffalo over the past week. Governor Kathy Hochul's latest budget proposal includes $500 million annually to help local governments repair and replace water and sewer infrastructure. This state effort should be strengthened by a healthy local capital budget with borrowing initiative.
And our Another Voice article is on healthcare. It's written by Al Cardillo, who's president and CEO of the Home Care Association of New York State. Home care saves money and needs state support. Home care serves tens of thousands of Western New Yorkers. However, much of this care is invisible to state policymakers. Unlike other regional providers, home care agencies have no sprawling campuses or 16-story hospital towers that rise into the skyline. But the thousands of local home care workers and their collective role in providing care is no less essential. State data reveals nearly 100,000 healthcare jobs in Western New York, of which roughly 20,000 are home care nurses, health aides, therapists, social workers, and other professionals who provide health and life-sustaining support for medically fragile locals. Notwithstanding, today there are more than 200,000 New Yorkers who can't access home care due to chronic service shortages. It is a growing crisis that demands immediate attention from state lawmakers. Home care agencies span an array with each tailored to specific needs. These agencies provide skilled nursing, clinical therapies, medication management, wound care, newborn care, shopping, personal hygiene, social and spiritual support, services that keep hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers out of far more costly hospitals and nursing homes. In Governor Hochul's recent state budget proposal, there are two elements that, if not modified, will only exacerbate the existing home care service shortages. One is the establishment of a $1.5 billion health care stability fund that inexplicably ignores home care. Every dollar in this fund seems steered only to nursing homes and hospitals, the costliest modes of care. The fund must be revised to also support home care and hospice agencies. The second is the inclusion of $1.2 billion in savings generated via changes to the Consumer-Directed Personal Assistance Program. While the magnitude of these savings is disputed, it's critical that lawmakers reinvest back into home care every dollar of savings that is identified. Nearly 60% of home care agencies report annual operating losses, even as 200,000 fragile New Yorkers wait for care. This can't continue. Most critically, given its proven ability to prevent costlier hospital and nursing home care, lawmakers must stop looking to home care for savings and instead recognize appropriately funded home care as savings.
And our editorial cartoon is from Tom Stiglich of Creators Syndicate. It is one frame. It is a pad that is a door entry pad, and that pad you would enter the United States Olympic team. And the sign on that footpad is "Check your politics at the door," referring to the addition of politics by some statements given by some of the participants in the Olympic Games.
Our first opinion piece is by John Crisp, who's from the Tribune News Service. Trump speaks a lot, but can't unsay these things. President Trump defenders often counsel me along these lines. Don't listen to what Trump says. Watch what he does. But saying something is also doing something, and some things once said cannot be unsaid. Here are 3 examples. Let's make a point with an example that predates Trump's presidencies. During the 2016 campaign, Trump bragged on the infamous Access Hollywood tape about enjoying such impunity as a celebrity that he could sexually assault women and they, quote, let you. These are remarks that not so long ago would have ended a politician's career immediately, but many Trump supporters rationalize them as, quote, locker room talk, permitting themselves to imagine that all men talk like that. In other words, this is who Trump is, and the fact that we've elected him to the presidency twice doesn't change that. It's no surprise that he and Jeffrey Epstein were such great pals. Another example, Greenland. Remember Greenland? A few weeks ago, Trump was threatening to go to war with Denmark in order to acquire the icy island for the United States. But now Greenland hardly gets a mention. Here's what I predict will happen with Greenland. Nothing. Or we might build some airfields or ports or missile defense systems, all of which we were permitted to do with Denmark's likely support before Trump raised this ruckus. But here's the part that Trump cannot unsay. Once you have said that you are willing to use military force to seize territory from an ally, there's no taking it back. It will take many years, if ever, for Denmark and our NATO allies to see us in quite the same way. Here's one more example. The Access Hollywood tape and Greenland are history, but this example has a significant bearing on the upcoming 2026 midterms. On February 1st, Trump said to podcaster Dan Bongino, "The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting." Nationalization of elections is clearly an unconstitutional and blatantly authoritarian move. The threat is part of Trump's campaign to convince us that the 2020 election was rigged. It wasn't. And that Democrats are such cheaters. They're not. That the federal government has to step in and take control. Is Trump really going to nationalize elections in 15 presumably Democratic-leaning states in 2026? My guess is he will not. Such a move would be so far beyond the constitutional pale that his advisors, his lawyers, the Republican leadership, or the courts might be able to dissuade him. But here's the part that can't be unsaid. Once a man has expressed his willingness to nationalize elections because he fears the outcome, there's no going back. It tells us who Trump is. Again, his defenders say, watch what Trump does, not what he says. The problem is that Trump has pounded the drumbeat of election fraud without evidence for almost a decade. He has installed election deniers in powerful positions. He has expressed his willingness to use the military to confiscate voting machines. You see the problem. Once we see what Trump does to contest the 2026 midterms, we'll realize much too late that we should have been listening to what he was saying all along.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio with Reading Service. The time is 27 minutes after the hour, and we will move on to our next opinion piece from L.Z. Granderson from the Los Angeles Times. The President of the United States posted a racist video on February 5th depicting Barack and Michelle Obama as apes. The next day, the White House dismissed criticism, but the president deleted the post. Was this episode disappointing? Yes. Surprising? Not anymore. Last spring, after Pope Francis had died, Donald Trump posted an AI image of himself as the Pope just days before cardinals convened to elect a successor. So no, it is not surprising that the president would choose to post virulent anti-Black imagery during Black History Month. But it is disappointing here in 2026 that an occupant of the Oval Office is still thinking like that. Back in 1971, the President of the United States left when the governor of California referred to the African delegates at the United Nations as monkeys. Less than 10 years later, that governor became the President of the United States. And here we are, half a century later, and yet another president has amplified that racist trope. meaning white supremacy is still on the ballot. That Nixon, Reagan, Trump through line isn't tightly wound around policy or principle, but simply that shared worldview. After all, Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency and Reagan offered amnesty to immigrants, highly un-Trump-like moves. No, their commonality is best revealed in the delight each man took in an old racist attack against black people. For Americans 50 and older, roughly a third of the nation, this worldview has been the architect responsible for White House policy for most of our lives. And yet, when Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election, the forensic investigation focused on grocery prices and her absence for Joe Rogan's podcast. Some mischaracterized her role at the border or inflated her influence on the war in Gaza. For some reason, race did not seem to receive the same level of scrutiny. This factor was cited despite decades of data, such as the wave of white nationalists endorsing Harris's opponent and the birther movement questioning President Obama's citizenship. The trio of presidents who are on the record as enjoying depictions of black people as monkeys, Nixon, Reagan, and Trump, all used racist dog whistles at their combined 10 presidential campaigns. Our nation's attempts at understanding ourselves are continuously undercut by the denial that for some single-issue voters, race is their single issue. And when the President of the United States entertains racist jokes, as Nixon did in the 1970s, or shares racist videos, as Trump continues to do, undoubtedly there is a sense among the electorate that such prejudice has a home in the White House. Earlier in the week, Harris relaunched her 2024 social media campaign account, calling it a place where Gen Z can meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civil leaders, faith leaders, young leaders, she exhorted. Stay engaged. I'll see you out there. Whether she plans to run in 2028 is unclear. What we do know is she would not have posted an AI picture of herself as the new pope while Catholics were mourning Francis or any other time. We know she would not have advocated for immigration officers to racially profile black and brown Americans or disregard the 14th Amendment to detain children. We do not know how many of her policy proposals she would have been able to get across the finish line in Congress, but we do know her record of public service to the American people, in contrast with the current president, who is suing the American people for $10 billion. There is nothing wrong with revisiting Harris's missteps on the campaign trail or debating her electability as she reemerges in the political spotlight. But now that Trump has resorted to posting monkey jokes about black people, perhaps updated forensics will consider our well-established history of racism among the factors in the 2024 election. It is not a shock that a president of the United States thinks poorly of black people, not when you know that more than 25% of those who have held office were themselves enslavers. But it is disappointing that 250 years into our nation's story, some of us still deny the role that racism plays in shaping our politics and thus all of our lives.
And our last opinion piece is by Jackie Calms from the Los Angeles Times. Misery has plenty of company in Trump's chaotic second term. If you wake each morning already angry at news of some of our latest outrage from President Trump, or some unhinged, malevolent message he posted online overnight, and if you then go to bed already burdened by nightmares from the headlines of the day, there's good news. You're not alone. Being social animals, humans find comfort in company, except in this case for Republicans nationwide who will face voters in November. And that's another thought that should be comforting, that those Trump-enabling Republicans are discomforted. Those were my reflections as I read the Wall Street Journal's report on a Texas Democrat's recent 14-point victory in a special state Senate election to represent a Fort Worth area district that Trump won by 17 points in 2024. That's a 31-point swing from red to blue. So sure, consider all the caveats about special elections being low turnout affairs that aren't exactly representative of the larger electorate that comes out in a general November election, but 31 points? What struck me even more, however, was independent voter Shanna Abbott's explanation why she supported Democrat Tyler Remmett in that race. Every day there's something insane happening. See, you're not alone in thinking that same thing. Misery loves company, an adage for our Trumpian times, and from solidarity comes action. That's what has Republicans quaking in this midterm election year. They're especially unnerved because they also know that every day Trump will say something, or do nothing, say, to rein in the brutal, even murderous thugs masquerading as federal law enforcement agents on U.S. streets, or to lower prices as he promised, instead of ultimately raising them with tariffs, and keep alive the disgust that so many Americans share. It's a growing majority, polls show. For more than a decade, this flooding the zone with expletive, as Trump High Priest Steve Bannon put it years ago, has been not just Trump's proclivity, but also a purposeful strategy to disorient and overwhelm the media as well as the public. Discombobulated, Trump's political foes as well as Americans generally just threw up their collective arms in surrender. It's just Trump being Trump. What's more, at Trump's debut on the national political stage, back when then-rival Jeb Bush presciently predicted during the 2016 campaign that Trump would be a chaos president, many Americans heard those words with welcoming ears and not as the warning that Bush intended. Many voters wanted a chaos agent to shake up Washington, a disruptor to, quote, drain the swamp, and to stick it to the elites. Never mind that billionaire Trump was one of those elites, as he's lately illustrating in spades, with word of every self-enriching crypto deal and each new black redaction from the tranche of criminality known as the Epstein files that might be protecting him or his predatory pals from infamy. Yet in his second term, encouraged in his worst authoritarian instincts by current aides, looking at you, Stephen Miller, the president has surpassed the limits of Americans' appetites for his rhubarbs. They're choking on his chaos, a revulsion that's exasperated when they see every day that Trump isn't making their lives more affordable. He rejects the word affordability as a Democratic, quote, con job. He instead seems preoccupied with erecting gold and marble monuments to himself in Washington and partying at his sumptuous Mar-a-Lago with, yes, the elites. Even some elites are hedging. A recent headline in the Washington Post, quote, Trump's chaotic governing style is hurting the value of the U.S. dollar, unquote. A weaker dollar, in turn, further raises ordinary Americans' costs for imports, including autos, electronics, clothes, food, and more. Americans have stomached a lot. They witnessed video of armed immigration agents shooting to death 2 citizens protesting in Minneapolis, only to hear Trump and his mooks slime and blame the victims. Americans saw 5-year-old Liam Ramos and 2-year-old Chloe Velasic taken by agents and sent 1,300 miles from Minneapolis to a detention center in Texas, just 2 among the thousands of children nabbed by immigration agents nationwide during Trump 2.0. Independent studies and data show. Reminder, nearly a third of the estimated 4,600 children victimized by first-term Trump's abhorrent family separation policy still have not been reunited with their families when he regained office. Local news carriers' horror stories in other cities coast to coast about the abuses of Trump's mass deportation operations. Beyond U.S. borders, Trump overtook a country, Venezuela, after the U.S. military abducted its leader without notice to Congress, then threatened to take Greenland from longtime ally Denmark, alienating Europe and threatening the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's continued existence. Measles are back. Trump announced he would close the Kennedy Center 2 years for reconstruction. His administration's cover-up of the Epstein file continues. And the Wall Street Journal reported a blockbuster on yet another Mideast deal benefiting the Trump family. Americans raise their kids to be good losers and tell them that elections are the foundation of democracy. Yet Trump continues to insist the 2020 election was stolen from him, had federal agents seize ballots from Fulton County, Georgia, to try to make his case yet again, and twice last week said Republicans should nationalize voting in at least 15 states. You can guess which ones, starting with California. He's fearful, as he should be, about the midterm elections. Companies coming.
In a surprise, U.S. adds 130,000 jobs in January. U.S. employers added a surprisingly strong 130,000 jobs last month, but government revisions cut 2024-25 U.S. payrolls by hundreds of thousands. The unemployment rate fell to 4.3%, the Labor Department said Wednesday. The report included major revisions that reduced the number of jobs created last year to just 181,000, a third the previously reported 584,000, and the weakest since the pandemic year 2020. The job market has been sluggish for months, even though the economy is registering solid growth. But the January numbers were much stronger than the 75,000 economists had expected. Healthcare accounted for nearly 82,000, or more than 60% of last month's new jobs. Factories added 5 million, snapping a streak.
How about 5,000?
Oh, 5,000, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Factories added 5,000, snapping a streak of 13 straight months of job losses. The federal government shed 34,000 jobs. Average hourly wages rose a solid 0.4% from December to January. The unemployment rate fell from 4.4 in December as the number of employed Americans rose and the number of unemployed fell. The surprisingly strong job gains in January were driven mainly by healthcare and social assistance. Heather Long, chief economist at Navy Federal Credit Union, wrote in a commentary, "But it is enough to stabilize the job market and send the unemployment rate slightly lower. This is still a largely frozen job market, but it is stabilizing. That's an encouraging sign to start the year, especially after the hiring recession in 2025. Weak hiring over the past year reflects the lingering impact of a high interest rates the Federal Reserve engineered in 2022-2023 to counter surging inflation, as well as Elon Musk's purge last year of the federal workforce. The chaos from President Trump's erratic trade policies also made businesses less willing to hire. Dreary numbers had been coming in ahead of Wednesday's report. Employers posted just 6.5 million job openings in December, fewest in more than 5 years. Payroll processor ADP reported last week that private employers added an unexpectedly weak 22,000 jobs in January. And the outplacement firm Challenger Gray and Christmas reported that companies slashed more than 108,000 jobs last month, the most since October and the worst January for job cuts since 2009. Several well-known companies announced layoffs too. UPS is cutting 30,000 jobs, chemical giant Dow shifting to more automation, and artificial intelligence is cutting 4,500 jobs. Amazon will slash 16,000 corporate jobs in its second round of mass layoffs in 3 months. A labor economist with ZipRecruiter said new data Wednesday could signal the start of a revival of the labor market. Hiring is getting a boost, she noted, from 3 interest rate cuts by the Fed last year. Trump's tariffs are proving somewhat smaller and more predictable than they appeared last spring, giving employers more confidence to hire. Bashad also noted that black unemployment, which she sees as a sign of where the overall job market might be headed, fell last month to 7.2%, the lowest since July. Ruth?
Dangerous superbug cases seen in Kentucky and other states. A superbug fungus is spreading in healthcare facilities across the country, and according to researchers from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, represents a multi-drug resistant threat that requires early detection and response. Candida auris, or C. auris, spreads easily in healthcare settings and can cause life-threatening infections in some patients, particularly those who need invasive medical equipment. According to the CDC's tracking page, clinical doses of Candida auris have continued to increase since it was first reported in 2016. As of 2023, the latest year for which data is available, 4,500 clinical cases were reported nationwide. As explained by the CDC, the fungus can colonize patients who spread it to others via contaminated surfaces, all without even knowing they have it to begin with. UK Healthcare has a small number of patients colonized with Candida auris, a top official for infection prevention and control at the Herald Leader. Told the Herald Leader. Here's what to know about Candida auris, including what one Lexington hospital is doing to prevent its spread. Why a superbug? As explained by UK Healthcare's Dr. Takai Kobayashi, Candida auris is sometimes called a superbug because many of its strains are resistant to common antifungal medications. In some cases, resistance can develop while a patient is receiving treatment, which can make infections more difficult to manage, said Kobayashi, Senior Medical Director for the Lexington Hospital's Infection Prevention and Control Unit, via email. That said, Kobayashi noted that there are effective antifungal therapies available to combat Candida auris infections, particularly when they are identified early. Candida auris mostly affects patients with severe medical conditions that require complex care. Those most at risk include patients who need invasive medical devices such as catheters and breathing or feeding tubes. How does the fungus spread? According to Kobayashi and the CDC, Candida auris spreads easily and primarily in healthcare settings. In some patients, it can cause life-threatening infections. Other patients can carry it on their skin without showing any signs of infection, called colonization. Patients who are infected or colonized with the fungus can spread it to other surfaces or objects, such as doorknobs, bed rails, and medical equipment, indirectly passing it on to other patients. This is why strict infection prevention practices, including hand hygiene and environmental cleaning, are essential, he said. According to the CDC, Candida auris can survive on surfaces for long periods of time, and not all disinfectants can kill it. What's more, patients can remain colonized for several weeks, months, or longer, even if they've never shown symptoms. Outbreaks can often be traced back to one infected or colonized patient transferred between facilities, the CDC states. UK's Chandler Hospital has previously reported cases of Candida auris, and UK Healthcare currently has some patients with the fungus, Kobayashi said. The fungus is present but not causing active infection. This is not unusual given the increasing prevalence of Candida auris nationally and the proactive screening practices in place at our institution, Kobayashi said. Most of the cases UK Healthcare deals with are colonization rather than active infections. There have been no serious infections of Candida auris requiring antifungal treatment in years, Kobayashi told the Herald Leader. UK Healthcare has implemented several measures to combat the fungus, including screening at-risk patients at the point they're admitted into one of the hospital's facilities. When Candida auris is identified in a patient, UK Healthcare follows strict infection prevention guidelines to reduce the risk of transmission to other patients. These measures include placing patients in appropriate isolation, requiring healthcare staff to use personal protective equipment when providing care, and performing enhanced cleaning and disinfection of the patient's environment. And I will say that UK Healthcare stands for the University of Kentucky. I kept thinking United Kingdom, and I said, no, that's not right.
Yeah, glad you cleared that up. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Bauda Carol. Biggie Donald, nicknamed Coach. Brayer Mark. Kursworth Judy, wife of Peter Kursworth and wife of the late Gary Simon, and her maiden name was Carochi. Lapore Bambina, nee DeCellis. Lewis David. Sheffer Kathleen, nicknamed Kathy, nee Gallagher. Sramka Raymond. Tedesco Pauline, nee Alimo. Also on the national scene, James Vander Beek, a heartthrob who starred in coming-of-age dramas at the dawn of the new millennium, shooting to fame playing the titular character in Dawson's Creek, and in later years mocking his own hunky persona, has died at the age of 48. Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555.
And now we'll look to our astrology article, Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Thursday, February 12th. You are a natural leader with concerns for social justice. You're objective and progressive. You appreciate the finer things in life. This is a year of service, perhaps service to family. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 is dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And perusing this, most everybody is having a average day, a couple with positives. Aries, average day. You might need to take a news fast because today the media, foreign countries, pushing or higher education might depress you. Tonight, you're admired. Taurus, positive. You are the financial wizard of the zodiac, and today financial news about inheritances, shared property, taxes, or debt might disappoint you. Tonight, explore. Gemini, average. Be patient with partners, spouses, and close friends today, even if they're cold or insensitive. In fact, separations might even occur. It's just a temporary thing. This is a temporary influence. Tonight, check your finances. Cancer, average day. Don't ask bosses, supervisors, or authority figures for permission or approval today if it is connected with your work, your health, or a pet. The answer will probably be talk to the hand. Tonight, cooperate. Leo, average day. Romance is in the toilet this morning. Even relations with your kids are strained. Rise above these difficulties. They are temporary. By this evening, things will look different. Tonight, get organized. Virgo, average day. Family discussions might disappoint you this morning, especially discussions with a parent or an older family member. You might feel criticized, misunderstood, or dismissed. Tonight, socialize. Libra, average day. Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do but gets you nowhere. Try not to fall into negative thinking today, which is easy to do. Tonight, relax. Scorpio, average day. Financial matters look discouraging today. This could pertain to your salary, your cash flow, or a financial deal you might anticipate. It might even relate to a purchase. Tonight, chatty conversations. Sagittarius, average day. This morning, the moon is in your sign at odds with stern Saturn, which makes people feel lonely and out of touch with each other. Tonight, check your money. Capricorn, positive day. Although this morning might be a struggle, later today, after the moon moves into your sign, things end up in a lovely, positive way. Tonight, you win. Aquarius, average day. Don't worry if you feel disappointed in a friend or member of a group this morning. This is due to a negative influence that everyone feels. Tonight, privacy. And Pisces, average day. Don't ask for permission or approval from an authority figure this morning. Later in the day, after the moon changes signs, relations with friends and groups are warm and friendly. Tonight, be friendly.
And today in history, in 2019, Mexico's most notorious drug lord, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was convicted in New York of running an industrial-scale drug smuggling operation, murder, and money laundering. He's currently serving a life sentence at the federal Supermax prison facility in Florence, Colorado. And Netanyahu meets with Trump over Iran talks. President Donald Trump met privately with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday and said he insisted negotiations with Iran continue as the U.S. pushes for a nuclear deal. Netanyahu spent nearly 3 hours at the White House, but he entered and left out of the view of reporters, and he and Trump didn't take questions. In a social media post, the president said, "There was nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated. If it can, I let the prime minister know that will be a preference. If it cannot, we will just have to see what the outcome will be." Netanyahu's office said the two leaders discussed negotiations with Iran as well as developments in Gaza and around the region and agreed to continue their close coordination and relationship. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, February 12th on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
Go.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak. And we'll go to our city and region. Langworthy Kennedy bill aims to close loophole on pilot safety. And this is by Jade Tokaz, who's a news staff reporter. It has been 17 years since insufficient flight training attributed to a fiery plane crash in Clarence that killed 50 people. The families of the victims of Flight 3407 crash in 2009 fought for new federal rules mandating that at least 1,500 hours of flight training for pilots, a standard that's been in place on commercial flights since a year after the crash. But when a charter airline runs a regular scheduled flight, selling tickets in the same manner as a commercial carrier, it's not subject to the same safety standards, including the requirement of 1,500 hours of flight time for pilots. At the urging of the families of Flight 3407 victims, 2 area members of Congress on Wednesday introduced a bipartisan bill to close this loophole, which critics say is being exploited without regard for the safety of airline passengers. U.S. Representatives Tim Kennedy of Buffalo and Nick Langworthy of Clarence proposed the Safe Flights for Passengers and Flight Crews Act to hold charter airlines to the same rigorous safety rules that traditional commercial airlines must follow when it comes to pilot training and experience. This common sense legislation puts the safety of passengers, crew members, and the public first, Kennedy said in a statement. For Western New Yorkers, aviation safety is deeply personal, and our community has long led the fight to make our skies safer. Every American deserves the same high safety standards when they board a plane. We owe it to the families of Flight 3407 and to every traveler to keep our skies safe and prevent future tragedies. Families of the Flight 3407 crash victims waged a year-long battle to have new aviation safety regulations adopted, but those standards didn't address the charter industry. Langworthy, who serves as chairman of the House Aviation Safety Caucus, has pushed other aviation safety reform efforts, including the reauthorization 2 years ago of the 2010 air safety changes prompted by the crash in Clarence. He also introduced a bill in 2024 to subject most charter flights to the same TSA security screening requirements as regular commercial airlines. Langworthy said he was proud to introduce the latest legislation, which builds on his previous work by closing a loophole some carriers are using to sidestep these rigorous requirements. It reinforces a simple but critical principle that safety must always come first, and there can be no shortcuts for the airlines responsible for getting Americans to their destinations safely, he added. The Safe Flights for Passengers and Flight Crews Act has the backing of the Airline Pilots Association. No airline operator should be able to exploit the regulatory gap to avoid the standards that govern scheduled commercial service, said Captain Jason Ambrosi, president of the ALPA and a pilot for Delta Airlines. Yet today, some carriers are running what amount to scheduled airline flights that operate in the same airspace, serve the same passengers, and fly from largely the same airports without meeting the highest level of aviation safety standards. This bill ensures a level playing field and, more importantly, ensures that every passenger can board a flight with confidence that the same rigorous safety standards apply no matter the carrier or the destination.
Training facility gun range work is placed on hold, and this is by Justin Sondel, who is a news staff reporter. Work on a Buffalo Police training facility and gun range has been put on hold as a lawsuit seeking to block the project proceeds. Plaintiff's attorney Stephanie Adams said the city had agreed to halt work on the building at least until March 11th, the next scheduled court date in the case. Adams said the plaintiffs, including 4 residents who live near the proposed facility in the Broadway-Fillmore neighborhood, and the advocacy group Liberation for One, Liberation for All, appealed to city government to slow the process down and reconsider the location, but the city pushed forward with approvals last year. The proposed training center and shooting range would be located at 379 Pedorowski Drive and was previously the Matt Urban Community Center. They did look to their government to do what in the process initially, and they weren't listened to, Adams said. Now they've taken the step of filing the lawsuit. The lawsuit filed last month claims that resident concerns were ignored and that several key approvals, including environmental and zonal clearances, were not done properly. Included in the arguments for the court to halt the process are that the city, one, improperly approved a zoning variance for the project to go forward. Second, did not comply with the State Environmental Quality Review Act by omitting the gun range as a use in related documents. 3, plans to improperly use bonds issued for a similar facility at a different location in South Buffalo. And 4, does not have the approval of the state legislature to change the use of part of the property from parkland as is required under state law. Tamora Gibson, one of the plaintiffs who lives near the site, said she is concerned about lead from ammunition causing contamination in the community where her children play. Gibson said she'd like to see the building return to its former use as a community center, which she remembers visiting as a child. Kids can go and tutor them, have somewhere where they can go after school, she said. Gilmore District Common Council member Mitch Nowakowski has repeatedly said that he has been in contact with neighbors and held block club meetings to explain the project and said it received support from neighbors. Police have already been using the facility for classroom work and training simulations. The department has not had its own gun range since 2018, when it closed the former headquarters on Franklin Street to move into the Dillon Public Safety Building on Niagara Square. BPD officers currently use other department facilities which limit options for state-mandated range training and cost the city money for use of other facilities. Members of Mayor Sean Ryan's administration previously told the News they were reviewing the plans and the lawsuit, both of which were filed prior to Ryan taking office in January. A spokesperson did not immediately return an email requesting comment on Wednesday. Adams said discussions with the new administration have been cordial, and she hopes they will consider settling the matter before it moves to a civil trial. At every step of the way, I know my clients will be open to the most graceful solution, she said. Henry Louis Taylor, Jr., founding director of the University at Buffalo Center for Urban Studies at the School of Architecture and Planning, has been studying East Side neighborhoods for years and is set to begin a pilot program in Broadway Fillmore. He said the gun range would be unacceptable to residents in other wealthier neighborhoods with more political capital, and that politicians would never try to put the facility in those neighborhoods because it's an unwanted form of land use, so the neighborhood is a dumping ground, he said.
$30 million grant boosts Eastern Hills Mall revival. This is written by Stephen Watson, who's a news staff reporter. A major regional redevelopment project got a boost on Wednesday when the state said it would spend $30 million to upgrade the sewer network around the Eastern Hills Mall. Local officials had said the long-awaited overhaul of the mall in Clarence required expanding sewer capacity in this section of the Transit Road corridor. Clarence, Amherst, and Erie County leaders had asked the state to pay for this work, and the governor's office has now approved a $30 million grant for the improvements. We are unlocking the future of economic development along Transit Road, as this critical infrastructure investment will help transform the Eastern Hills Mall into a vibrant, mixed-use town center, Governor Hochul said in a statement. The grant will pay for the installation of a new sewer line and construction of a new pumping station to serve the mall site and other properties along Transit. The town has rezoned the 100-acre mall property for reuse as a living center. Uniland Development and mall owner Mountain Development envision a mixed-use conversion with up to several thousand people living there and as much as 3 million square feet of space at a cost approaching $1 billion. It'll lift up all of Western New York. It's a great asset for Erie County and Western New York, and everybody will benefit from the tax revenue that hopefully this piece of property will generate, Clarence Supervisor Patrick Casilio said Wednesday in thanking Hochul, the town's state representatives, and other officials for their work on the grant. The developers have said they are looking for one or more anchor tenants to build around in the project's first phase, but construction hadn't started as they awaited clarity on the sewer improvements. Upgrading this infrastructure removes that barrier for every business along Transit Road, opening the door to millions of dollars in future economic development and positioning the entire region for sustainable long-term growth, Carl Montante Jr., Uniland's Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Initiatives, said in a statement. Uniland and Mountain Development have been working for years on a reuse of Eastern Hills, which, like other traditional shopping centers, has struggled in the e-commerce era. They propose creating a town center on the site, clearing out and demolishing the mall to make way for walkable roads, housing, freestanding retail, and entertainment options. Plans call for up to 1,500 residential units on the site, with Casilio predicting high demand for this housing. The project has received concept environmental approval from the Clarence Town Board, and Uniland has sought new commercial tenants for the town center. But Casilio has cautioned as recently as his January 30th State of the Town address that the transformation of the small site into a living center hinged on receiving the sewer aid. Local leaders said their communities couldn't pay the full cost of this sewer expansion, which is why they turned to the state for help. The redevelopment of the Eastern Hills Mall offers an opportunity to repurpose an underutilized commercial property to boost the local economy, solve our housing crisis, create good-paying jobs, and improve the quality of life for all Western New Yorkers, Hochul said. Erie County previously committed $3 million for design and engineering work for the sewer upgrade. The towns of Amherst and Clarence have agreed to put $1.6 million combined into the sewer improvements. The Eastern Hills Mall project is an exciting redevelopment of an old site, and these grants play a key role in bringing it to new life, including much-needed new multi-unit housing for our community, Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz said in a statement. Casilio said he expects design and engineering on the sewer upgrade to continue through the year, with construction on the improvements likely to begin in 2027. This work could take place while Amherst and Clarence construct a long-planned $6 million sewer connector line to Transit Road, work that is meant to address existing capacity needs in the area, the supervisor said. The state's investment in the Eastern Hills Mall sewer work comes a little over 2 years after New York agreed to put $31 million toward increasing the sewer capacity near the Boulevard Mall site in Amherst, which also is eyed for a major multi-year overhaul. Both mall projects anticipate transforming stagnant shopping malls into revitalized mixed-use destinations. Casilio said the Eastern Hills Mall property will generate new property sales and income tax revenue as it draws thousands of people to the town. The town of Clarence does not have a village, so this will be like a village population for us. Uniland has expected the mall overhaul to take up to 20 years to complete, but it is not known when the first phase will begin. Our goal is to start as quickly as we can with a formal announcement anticipated in the months ahead, Ryan Weiss, a company spokesperson, said in an email.
We'll go into a couple of brief that we were unable to get to. Voting. The House approved the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility legislation Wednesday on a mostly party line vote, 218 to 213. The bill, which would impose strict new proof of citizenship requirements, faces blowback in the Senate. And from the Arctic, NATO launched a new military effort Wednesday dubbed Arctic Sentry, aimed at improving security in the high north a month after U.S. President Donald Trump wrapped up tensions in the alliance with his threats to annex Greenland. Moscow will observe the limits of the New START treaty, the last nuclear arms pact, with the U.S. that expired last week, as long as it sees the U.S. do the same, Russia's top diplomat said Wednesday. Settlement. The maker of a gun accessory tied to a racist shooting that killed 10 black people at the supermarket in Buffalo will pay $1.75 million to survivors and victims' families and stop selling the device in New York State. The National Governors Association said governors from both parties could meet with President Trump later this month after the White House initially extended invitations for a business meeting only for Republicans. Ruth?
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour, and we will now go to our sports page. Part of the solution. Tackle Carter wants to contribute to Bills' revamped defensive line, and this is an article by Jay Skirtsky, who's a news sports reporter. The NFL is very much an out-of-sight, out-of-mind league. That explains why, when forecasting what the Buffalo Bills' defensive line will look like for the 2026 season, Dwayne Carter's name hasn't come up much. Carter missed the entirety of the 2025 season after suffering a torn Achilles tendon during practice just about a week before the start of the regular season. Combined with the 6-game suspension of veteran defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi, that left the Bills' depth at the position quite depleted before a real game had even been played. It also continued a tough start to his professional career for Carter, who missed 5 games as a rookie in 2024 following wrist surgery. He played in 11 games, making 14 tackles, but was a healthy inactive for the playoffs. Carter had surgery on his Achilles just days after being hurt and said last month, as the Bills cleaned out their lockers, that his recovery was on schedule. He hopes to be ready for the start of training camp. There are obviously specific protocols to be followed, he said, but that's the plan, to be ready to go. Coming into the league, scouting reports suggested that Carter could be a scheme-versatile player. That's especially important to consider this offseason, with the Bills switching from a base 4-3 defense to a 3-4 scheme under new defensive coordinator Jim Lanhard. Carter is under contract for 2 more seasons, which is another important consideration at a position with 4 pending unrestricted free agents: Ogunjobi, Jordan Phillips, Fedarian Mathis, and Daquan Jones. In addition to Carter, Deion Walker, Ed Oliver, and T.J. Sanders are signed for next season. I got hurt doing something I do every single day. I've probably done it a million times in my life, so for me to have the opportunity to get back out there, I'm just blessed. The Bills used a 3rd-round draft pick on Carter in 2024 out of Duke, where he became the first 3-time team captain in Blues Devils history. The following year, Bean used a 2nd-round pick on Sanders, a 3rd-round pick on defensive end Landon Jackson, and a 4th-round pick on Walker. That's a substantial investment on the defensive line that to this point has offered little in return. Dwayne Carter, Bills defensive tackle. Walker had a very promising rookie season, but Jackson got hurt and missed almost the entire year. Sanders, meanwhile, was asked to play out of position at defensive end because of injuries, which stunted his development. The Bills need all 4 of them to be contributors next season. The Bills added some depth to the roster behind Josh Allen on Wednesday. The team signed quarterback Shane Buechele to a 1-year contract. Wide receiver Jalen Virgil also signed a 1-year contract for the 2026 season. Buechele, 28, has been part of the organization for the past 3 seasons. He was a member of the practice squad in 23, then spent the 24 season on injured reserve because of a neck injury. He did earn a Super Bowl ring when he was with Kansas City. Mitch Trubisky, the Bills' number 2 quarterback last season behind Allen, is scheduled to become an unrestricted free agent this month. so Buckley provides some organizational depth at the position. So too does Virgil at wide receiver. A former rookie undrafted free agent of the Broncos in 2022, Virgil played in 9 games as a rookie for Denver, making 2 catches for 75 yards, including a 66-yard touchdown on his first career reception. He spent the 23 season on Denver's injured reserve, then was waived ahead of the 24 season. The Bills signed Virgil to their practice squad the next day, and he eventually appeared in 7 games for Buffalo during the 24 season, although he did not make any catches. He was released by the Bills ahead of the 25 season. He briefly spent time with the Arizona Cardinals on their practice squad and also played for the D.C. Defenders of the United Football League.
From the Olympics, some notes. Lindsey Vonn had a successful third surgery on her broken left leg following her downhill crash at the Olympics, the American skier said on Wednesday. Von Allmen is a breakout star. Franjo von Allmen of Switzerland looks like a breakout star of the Milan Cortina Olympics after winning his 3rd gold medal. Von Allmen won the Super G in Bormio on Wednesday to become the 3rd man with 3 victories in alpine skiing at 1 Winter Games. It hadn't been done since 1968. That's not a priority for Von Allmen, though. He said he's just staying in the moment. As for history, maybe in a few years it will be important for me, he added. He won the downhill on Saturday and paired with Tanguy Neff to win the team combined Monday. The NHL star back on the Olympic ice. The puck dropped on the men's hockey on Wednesday, marking the return of NHL players to the games for the first time since 2014. It started with Juraj Slavkovsky, show part 2. The Slovakian forward, who lit up the 2022 Olympics as a 17-year-old tournament MVP, returned as an NHL star with the Montreal Canadiens and picked up where he left off. The NHL opted not to participate in the Pyongyang Olympics of 2018, and pandemic-related scheduling issues prompted the league to skip the Beijing Games in 2022. The Canadian team at the Winter Olympics issued a statement saying it was heartbroken after waking to the news of a deadly shooting in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. A standoff between Ukrainian athlete Vladislav Harakevich and the International Olympic Committee rumbled on as he again trained in a helmet decorated with portraits of Ukrainians killed in Russian attacks, many of them athletes. The IOC said it won't allow the helmet in competition. For Italy, it was a double gold night in doubles luge, and USA Luge made history, not the kind the Americans have been waiting for to enjoy. Emanuel Ryder and Simon Kane-Waldner of Italy rallied in the second heat to win the Olympic men's doubles gold medal at the Milan Cortina Games on Wednesday for their country. No words, I've lost my voice now. I've been screaming too much. I'm super happy, said Ryder. Thomas Schuh and Wolfgang Kindl of Austria were second, and Tobias Wendel and Tobias Arlet of Germany were back-to-back Olympic champions coming into Wednesday. They won gold in Sochi, Pyongyang, and Beijing, taking every men's doubles gold at the Olympic since Andreas Linger and Wolfgang Linger won the race for Australia. For the U.S., Marcus Mueller and Ansel Haugsa, junior world champions 2 years ago, were the leaders at the midway point of the 2-run race, making some Olympic history for USA Luge. And U.S. speed skater Jordan Stoltz, his picture is here, pictured this moment most of his life ever since he was 5 and learning to skate on a frozen pond in his Wisconsin backyard. after falling in love with speed skating while watching the 2010 Winter Olympics on TV and hoping one day to step atop the podium. So what was the little hassle of a 10-plus minute wait to make sure his first speed skating gold medal officially would be his Wednesday? I didn't think anybody was going to beat that time. I was just like feeling you finally did it, said the 21-year-old Stoltz, who was trailing silver medalist Jenning de Boer of the Netherlands with 400 meters to go. It almost doesn't seem real, right? Now Stoltz will keep going and adding to his collection of trophies. He's entered in 3 more events in Milan. Good luck to him.
And now our article on the NBA. Wembanyama proves point with 40-point barrage in win. Victor Wembanyama began his 40-point performance against the Lakers on Tuesday night with a 25-point first quarter. That relentless start was a direct message from both the San Antonio Spurs and their young superstar. Wembanyama is tired of the Spurs playing poorly against lesser opponents, and he took it upon himself personally to make spectacularly quick work of a Lakers lineup missing nearly all of Los Angeles' best players in San Antonio's 136-108 victory. When Wembanyama coolly dropped in a turnaround fadeaway jumper that gave him 25 points with 4 minutes still left in the first quarter, it was clear he was in a profound groove. The French big man went 8 of 9 from the field with 3 three-pointers in those first 8 minutes. He went on to a 37-point first half while leading San Antonio to a 30-point lead over the Lakers, who were without Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves. Wembanyama had the highest scoring first half performance by anybody in the NBA this season and the highest scoring half by a Spurs player in the 21st century. And he played only 26 minutes, the fewest of any player in a 40-point game since Sleepy Floyd did it in 24 minutes in February 1991. He was looking for his shot at every opportunity, and his teammates fed him relentlessly. It was all by design for the center, who will start his first All-Star game this weekend several miles down the freeway at Intuit Dome. These kinds of games, you've got to have greed, he said. Although the Lakers altered their defensive game plan and upped their intensity in the third quarter after that first half embarrassment, only the grind of the NBA season likely held Wembanyama to a mere 40 points, 10 shy of his career high. The Spurs have another game at Golden State on Wednesday night, so Coach Mitch Johnson gave an early night to Wembanyama after he hit one last three-pointer and checked out with 4 minutes and 13 seconds left in the third. The Spurs are 14-7 since New Year's Eve, but they've lost to Charlotte, New Orleans, Memphis, and Portland in that stretch. San Antonio has the NBA third-best record despite those lapses. Wembanyama will be in the Spurs' only All-Star in Inglewood this weekend, and Johnson is surprised by that development, although he also has a guess about why it happened. I do think it's very interesting that Aaron Fox and Stefan Castle had not been named in an All-Star. 7 teams in this league have multiple All-Stars, and we've played pretty good against a lot of the top teams in this league. Nothing to take away from anybody who has been named an All-Star because they have a lot of great players. But the only way I can think we are deserving of only one All-Star means there must be an awful lot of people that have Victor Wembanyama as one of the front-runners for MVP. The Spurs, 37-16, have the best record among teams without multiple All-Stars. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 28 minutes past the hour. And now we will go to Ask Eric and see what his advice is today. Dear Eric, I have had a best friend, Beth. I've known her since we were 23 years old. We have not always lived in the same city nor seen each other regularly, but when we do, it's as if no time or distance has passed. We connect immediately. My problem is that Beth does not always return texts or calls in a timely fashion. I mean, weeks will go by, or sometimes she won't reply at all. She is a married, childless medical professional who works part-time. It seems that she could easily make the time. I feel very ignored and neglected. I also feel pretty childish that I feel this way. Is it normal, modern etiquette to do I just accept that my best friend is just kind of flaky? Ignored by my bestie. Dear Bestie, although there are many ways of handling texts and cell phone calls, I hesitate to say that this is the modern etiquette. However, our phones and other devices can often give us the impression that we're all experiencing time and communication in the same way, and that isn't true. Sometimes I'll get professional emails that include a signature line that reads, "Your work hours may not be my work hours. Please don't feel obligated to respond outside of your work hours." I like this because it acknowledges that people manage their time differently. Along the same lines, it will help you to have a conversation with Beth about expectations and hopes around communication. Try not to frame it as a demand. She's not wrong for taking a long time to get back to you, per se. Maybe her expectations around texting are laxer, or she finds replying overwhelming. So come at it from a place of curiosity. Does texting or calling work for her, or is there a better way to stay in contact? Does she prefer to have a set time, perhaps, or even to receive a calendar invite? In this conversation, you can also talk about what works for you and what makes you feel valued. Armed with this information, you'll both be able to communicate better. Next letter. Dear Eric, I've been married for 37 years to a man who is everything most people dream of in a spouse, except one. He automatically says no or disagrees with 98% of everything I say or suggest. I've learned not to ask questions that I know he will respond to in a negative. I've also asked him many times over the years to work on saying yes more. Last night, when he disagreed on plans I had for hosting a party, I threatened to withhold sex, and then he agreed to say yes, but he still grumbled a little and said he didn't like one part of my plan. I used to brush it off as him being the youngest child in a big family whom everyone doted on. He's also a true leader in everything he does, and I respect and admire him immensely. But this has been bothering me more lately and making me not like him. Are there other things I can say or do to make him quit snapping out negative responses? Or should I continue to just accept it and work on not getting resentful? No more no. Dear No More No, first off, you don't have to just accept it. Though the method you describe worked in general, much as it did for ancient Greece's Lysistrata, it's not a perfect tool for negotiation, as that title character in Aristophanes' play would attest. But what you're looking for is respect and an equal footing in your partnership. That's something you deserve. Every relationship, marriages included, is reliant on communication. Communication patterns and strategies vary person to person and relationship to relationship. What I see in your husband's repeated no response is a refusal to communicate. This leaves you with little to no recourse. It makes sense that you've tried to puzzle this out on your own, attributing it to his upbringing and career. But that may be part of it, but none of us gets a free pass for bad behavior simply because of where we're from or what we've been through, good or bad. When a couple is having trouble communicating, it's time to bring in a third party to help translate and build new ways of speaking. That third party is often a marriage therapist. Talking to one might help you and your husband a lot. Now, what if he says no to this as well? Remind him that this issue is causing a problem in your marriage, and it's causing a problem for you. You believe that the problem is fixable, and you'd like to try. Is he saying no to having a better, happier marriage?
Trump says he insisted to Netanyahu that nuclear talks with Iran continue. President Trump met for more than 2 hours behind closed doors with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday and said he insisted that negotiations with Iran continue as the U.S. pushes for a nuclear deal with Tehran. Netanyahu entered the White House out of the view of reporters and left without issuing a statement on what was said. But Trump, in a subsequent post on his social media site, called it a very good meeting, but said there was nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated. If it can, I let the Prime Minister know that will be a preference. If it cannot, we will just have to see what the outcome will be. He added, last time Iran decided that they were better off not making a deal, and we were hit by U.S. strikes. Hopefully this time they will be more reasonable and responsible. The visit from Netanyahu, their seventh meeting during Trump's second term, comes as Tehran and Washington are objecting cautious optimism after holding indirect talks in Oman on Friday about how, once again, to approach the negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. Trump said in a Tuesday interview with Fox Business Network's Larry Kudlow, "I think they'd be foolish if they didn't. We took out their nuclear power last time, and we'll have to see if we take out more this time." He added, "It's got to be a good deal, no nuclear weapons, no missiles." Netanyahu's office says he wants those talks to include limits on Iran's ballistic missile program and support for militant groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah. "I will present to the President our outlook regarding the principles of these negotiations, the essential principles which, in my opinion, are important not only to Israel, but to everyone around the world who wants peace and security in the Middle East," he said on Tuesday. It remains unclear how much influence Netanyahu will have over Trump's approach toward Iran. Trump initially threatened to take military action over Iran's bloody crackdown on nationwide protests in January, then shifted to a pressure campaign in recent weeks to try to get Tehran to make a deal over its nuclear program. Iran is still reeling from the 12-day war with Israel in June. The devastating series of airstrikes, including the U.S. bombing several Iranian nuclear sites, killed nearly 1,000 people in Iran and almost 40 in Israel. Trump at the time said the U.S. action had obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities, though the amount of damage remains unclear. Satellite photos of nuclear sites have recently captured activity, prompting concern that Iran could be attempting to salvage or assess damage at the sites. Israel has long called for Iran to cease all uranium enrichment, dial back its ballistic missile program, and cut ties to militant groups across the region. Iran has always rejected those demands, saying it would only accept some limits on its nuclear program in return for sanctions relief. Washington has built up military forces in the region, sending an aircraft carrier, guided missile destroyers, air defense assets, and more to supplement its presence. Arab and Islamic countries, including Turkey and Qatar, have been urging both sides to show restraint, warning that any strike or retaliation could have destabilizing consequences for a region already strained by the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. In his post, Trump added he and Netanyahu had also discussed the tremendous progress being made in Gaza and the region in general. Trump plans to hold the first meeting next week of his so-called Board of Peace, which was initially framed to oversee future steps of U.S.-brokered Gaza ceasefire plan, but has taken shape with Trump's ambitions for resolving other global crises. Earlier Wednesday, Netanyahu met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio at Blair House across the street from the White House. The Prime Minister signed to be part of the board, which could indicate he might skip its first official meeting. On Iran, Trump said Friday that his special envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner had very good talks, and more were planned this week. But the Republican president kept up the pressure, warning that if Iran did not make a deal over its nuclear program, the consequences are very steep. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi made similar comments, saying there will be consultations on next steps. He also said the level of mistrust between the two longtime adversaries remains a serious challenge facing negotiations. He signaled that Iran would stick to its position that it must be able to enrich uranium, a major point of contention with Trump. Netanyahu met with Witkoff and Kushner shortly after arriving in Washington on Tuesday evening, and they gave him an update on the talks held with Iran and Oman, the Prime Minister's office stated. Araghchi said in November that Iran was no longer enriching uranium due to the damage from last year's war. Before the war, Iran had been enriching uranium up to 60% purity, a short technical step away from weapons-grade levels. The UN nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, had said Iran was the only country in the world to enrich that level that was not armed with the bomb. Iran has been refusing requests by the IAEA to inspect the sites bombed in the June war. Even before that, Iran has restricted IAEA inspections since Trump's decision in 2018 to unilaterally withdraw the U.S. from Iran's 2015 nuclear deal with world powers.
UB Buffalo State keep presidential searches secret. And this is written by Matt Glenn, who's a news staff reporter. When state universities in New York are looking to hire new presidents, it's up to them to determine whether to have an open or closed process for vetting candidates. The University at Buffalo and Buffalo State University both are keeping the names of the contenders secret. While critics of the process say it sends the wrong message to the community, the universities argue it is necessary to attract the best pool of applicants. Both jobs are expected to be filled within the next few months. Satish Tripathi, the UB president, announced in September that he would step down in July. He has served as president since 2011. At Buffalo State, Benito Duran's interim presidency is scheduled to conclude at the end of the current academic year. Durand was named interim president in 2023. In 24, she agreed to stay on for another 2 academic years after the appointment of a new president, Chance Glenn, was rescinded. SUNY's guidelines for a presidential search say that when semifinalists for a president's job are scheduled to visit campus, their names are released to the public along with general information about their background and qualifications. The guidelines also recommend campus visits to allow a large number of campus and community members to meet and hear from each candidate. But SUNY's guidelines also allow for a representational search, which avoids making public the names of candidates. The chancellor and the board of trustees need to agree to allow a university to go that route. While a representational search maintains confidentiality, it also limits the vetting of candidates to those who are designated to be part of the interviews and meetings, in contrast to public forums open to anyone. SUNY Chancellor John King defended the closed-door approach. He said that, generally in higher education around the country, folks have almost entirely moved to closed searches, because otherwise you don't really get quality candidates. Folks are in jobs, they enjoy their colleagues and their current work, and they don't necessarily want to announce that they are in a search, he said. King said presidential search committees are typically huge and cover a wide range of constituencies, including faculty members, students, staff, alumni, and community members. Even in a closed search, the candidates still come to campus, but they meet with smaller groups, he said. Linda Dobmeyer, the chair of the Buffalo State Council, who is leading the university's 17-member search committee, said protecting the privacy of the candidates is part of an effort to attract the best candidates. Maintaining strict confidentiality is essential, she said in a recent update on the search process. Protecting the privacy of candidates is critical to ensuring a strong competitive process and to respecting the professional obligation of those who have stepped forward. In her message in September about the launch of the presidential search, Dobmeier contended that releasing the names would likely diminish the number of qualified leaders in the applicant pool. Since only 3 semifinalists are recommended to SUNY as finalists, and only 1 candidate is selected to become Buffalo State's next president, the others will likely remain at their current institutions, she said. Dobmeier said public exposure would force them to explain their candidacies at their current employers and possibly put their jobs at risk. UB also plans to keep the names of its final contenders a secret. UB's presidential prospectus, which outlines qualifications and expectations for the job, said it will be a confidential search with no public announcement of finalist names. Fred Cowell, statewide president of the United University Professions, a higher education union, said both UB and Buffalo State ought to be running open search processes. I really think having that transparency and having those public sessions is really important, Cowell said. A campus president, if that person is going to be successful, has to be connected to the community, and we need to have a full community input. The president of the University of Buffalo is a major figure in Western New York, and the president of Buffalo State in the city of Buffalo, and especially as that institution struggles to get out of debt. These are 2 really important hires, and I would much prefer the traditional way of operating in SUNY, he said. Cole said the representational search will inevitably lock people out if they are not invited to be part of the process. It smacks of an attempt to tightly control the process, tightly control who is a participant, and for that matter, tightly control who is brought in for candidates as well. Cole disputed the idea that a public process would produce a lower caliber pool of candidates because of concerns about the candidates' current employers knowing. If your staff and your individuals are desirable and being recruited by other places, I think that's an indication you're doing something right. I've never bought the argument that someone won't apply because their employer might see it as a negative. Here is a look at where things stand with the 2 university search processes. UB kicked off its search process in September and has worked with Russell Reynolds Associates, an executive search firm. Jerry Jacobs, Jr. is the chair of the 23-person presidential search committee. He is also the UB Council chair and CEO of Delaware North. During this month and in March, the search committee will review applicants and conduct interviews. The committee will recommend finalists to the UB Council, which will in turn make recommendations to King. The chancellor will recommend a nominee to the SUNY Board of Trustees to vote on. The person who is named UB's 16th president will take the reins of the state's largest public research university with more than 30,000 undergraduate and graduate students. UB also has 1,700 full-time faculty members and 6,800 full-time employees. UB continues to be such a great engine of opportunity for Western New York, King said. We're all going to miss Satish. He's done such a phenomenal job. But we're going to find the next great leader for UB, and I'm confident that they're going to continue to have tremendous impact on the regional economy. Buffalo State also launched its search process in September. Buffalo State is working with a different executive search firm, Witt Kiefer. In her recent update shared with the campus community, Dobmeier said the search has yielded a diverse group of accomplished and visionary leaders who have expressed strong interest in serving our campus and advancing its mission. While recruitment efforts continue in order to ensure the strongest possible pool, the community has identified a select group of top prospects for first-round interviews. Buffalo State has not specified when its process will conclude, but Dobmeier said the committee has adopted an intentionally ambitious timeline to move this search forward with momentum and care. Buffalo State will follow the process like UB's, advancing its recommendations, while the SUNY Board of Trustees will ultimately vote on a selection. Among the priorities Buffalo State listed in its presidential search prospectus for the person who is named its 10th president are eliminating the university's budget deficit and stabilizing enrollment.
We have Alan Pergamon's comments today as well. Sarah Minkowitz is joining the long list of female co-anchors of the weekday edition of WIVB-TV's Channel 4 Wake Up in the last decade or so. Minkowitz, who has been the weekend anchor of Wake Up, joined Scott Patterson on the morning program. She replaces Ali Tui, who left the program in November after 2.5 years in the position. In an email to Channel 4 staff, news director Josh Roy wrote, "Sarah is a proud Western New York native who grew up in North Buffalo and carries a deep love for her hometown. She began her career with us as a News 4 intern and went on to graduate from both Buffalo State and Syracuse University. Sarah has been part of the News 4 team for nearly 7 years, consistently demonstrating a strong work ethic, exceptional storytelling skills, and a genuine commitment to our community. Minkowitz has often expressed her pride to represent her Hispanic heritage in her roles at the station. In announcing this promotion on Facebook, Minkowitz wrote, "As the granddaughter of immigrants, this moment means more than I can put into words. I know they'd be proud." In a 2023 text exchange when she was named Weekend Wake Up anchor, Minkowitz explained that her mother's maiden name was Medalia Maldonado. Her mother's parents were from Puerto Rico. Sarah's grandmother was Aurora Maldonado Cruz. On her father's side, her grandmother was from the Ukraine and her grandfather was from Poland. They fled their countries during World War II and ended up in Venezuela, where Sarah's father was born. They moved to Buffalo when her father was a teenager. Channel 4, which has had a pattern of morning instability in recent years, has promoted its anchors from its staff rather than hire them from other markets. Minkowitz replaces Tui, who replaced Abby Friedman, who took a similar role at a Rochester station. Friedman replaced Kelsey Anderson in the morning, who replaced Mel Orleans, who replaced Brittany Smallwood, who replaced Teresa Weekly, who replaced Diana Fairbanks. Orleans, Weekly, and Fairbanks, who were brought here from other markets, left the area when they departed Channel 4. The revolving door of co-anchors on the morning program flies in the face of the conventional wisdom that audiences appreciate stability in that time period. The station has also had turnover in the morning male co-anchors with Jordan Williams, Dave Graber, Joe Arena, Chris Horvatis, and Patterson in that role over the last decades or so. By comparison, Daybreak Channel 2 co-anchor Melissa Holmes has been in that role for more than a decade on the area's first-place morning program and has worked with Pete Gallivan and John Beard in that time. The promotion of Minkowitz means that the station needs to fill her weekend role on Wake Up. It will be filled by current staffers until a permanent replacement is named. And WGR reporter Alex Rios Malvaya is leaving Western New York to take a similar position at WCNC, the NBC affiliate in Charlotte, North Carolina. The station has the same owner as Channel 2, Tegna. In an email to the staff, Channel 2 news director Judy Moore wrote, "She's been a great part of this newsroom since 2022. She's always put tremendous effort and heart into everything she does." Well, good luck to everybody.
Hamlin giving back to students. This article is by Catherine Fitzgerald, who's a news sports reporter. Applications now open for Damar Hamlin's Heroes Scholarship for Buffalo students. When it came time to name his scholarship for Buffalo-based students, Damar Hamlin had an easy decision. The Heroes Scholarship recognizes the Bills staff members who helped save Hamlin's life when he went into cardiac arrest during a game. Hamlin wanted to pay homage to them while helping future world changers. The scholarship truly exists because I'm still here, Hamlin said. The people who saved my life inspired me to save others' futures. The application for this year's Chasing M's Heroes Scholarship Program is now open. Interested Buffalo students can apply at www.chasingemsfoundation.org, the website for Hamlin's Foundation. The 10 scholarships, $1,000 each, are for underserved high school and college-bound students who aim to attend private high schools, trade schools, or area universities. Hamlin launched the Buffalo Scholarship Program 2 years ago at an anniversary dinner honoring the athletic training and medical staff that saved his life in January of 2023. It was an emotional announcement for those who have been part of his journey. I know what it feels like to need someone to believe in you, and this isn't just about charity, Hamlin told the Buffalo News. This is about opportunity, because Hamlin knows full well the impact a scholarship can have. A scholarship changed my life, Hamlin said. It put me in rooms I would never have been in otherwise. Hamlin was able to attend Central Catholic High School in Pittsburgh thanks to a partial scholarship that was started to honor Kyle Wilson, a young student athlete who died in 2008 while he was still in high school. Before that, Wilson was the starting running back at Central Catholic. Now, Hamlin wants to keep paying things forward. Applications will close on April 15th, and winners will be notified by June 15th. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, February 12th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak. And thank you for listening.
Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,